A small piece of history hangs on my bedroom wall. It's something my dad found at a garage sale in Vancouver, discarded for free on the curb. It is a piece of paper hanging in an ugly silver frame, printed with rows of faces and names. This was printed as an official ballot of the first multiracial election in South Africa, and this film is my attempt to understand what this piece of paper means today. I've stared at this ballot long enough to understand what is on it. I can see that 18 political parties are displayed in full color, along with a photo of their candidate. A 19th party registered too late to be printed and is attached to the bottom of the ballot by a sticker. I can see that instructions on how to use the ballot to vote are printed at the top in English, Afrikaans, and 9 African languages from Xhosa to Tsonga. I've also noted, to my amusement, that some of these parties seem like actual jokes. Who names their party KISS or soccer? Out of all these unnamed faces, I could recognize only one, 12 rows down. Nelson Mandela, the man who would win this election with 63% of the vote. But I wanted to know more. Who was Mandela in 1994? Why was this ballot stuffed with odd parties? How did the world's last officially racist state arrive at this moment of elections? Since these were questions I could only partially explore alone, I reached out to the South Africans I knew in my own province of British Columbia, Canada. Jayson, Steve, and Andiswa made clear to me that behind this ballot lies a struggle and a painful victory, the story of a nation that continues to search for its own soul.
There's Mr. Mandela, Mr. Nelson Mandela, a free man taking his first steps into a new South Africa.
The road to this ballot begins in 1990, when Nelson Mandela walks to freedom after 27 years in prison. The white government at the time knows the wheels of history are turning, that the system of apartheid, which assures the supremacy of the white South African atop a rigid racial hierarchy, is increasingly untenable. With Mandela free, what follows are 4 years of intense political negotiation between Mandela's African National Congress and the National Party government. It is a process threatened always by violence.
Or just in school, just your ordinary school day. And then what's that is just seeing people running like through the windows, which is okay, what's going on? And then in the middle of it, just pandemonium because of tear gas broke into the window, and we went outside and everyone is crying and kids running around, and I'm like, what is going on? Afterwards, it was explained to me that, there were people trying to get to the parliament building and the soldiers were trying to prevent that. That was, I think, for me, the first time I realized there was something going on.
At least 3 colored youths were killed outright.
The blast came without warning. The intent was clear, to wreck any chance of a peaceful end to 340 years of white rule here.
In their battle for the future of South Africa, anti-apartheid activists faced the same problem the election later would: how to educate and inform the people of a vast country of a dozen languages, where literacy was high and resistance illegal.
A lot of people do not understand or do not realize the type of underground network that was going on at the time, right? The ANC had a few leaflets out, pamphlets, books. In fact, the ANC main manual is called Sechaba, which means Spear of the Nation. And that would go, no covers, no nothing, just pamphlets, etc. And go out to different organizations in different languages. And there was a lot of underground work that was going on. And that's what it takes for any movement. All the laws, all the oppression, all the people being bought off, etc., all those people, you start realizing this is not going anywhere. I can't live my life like that. So you become part of the struggle.
In 1993, years of struggle seemed ready to pay off. The governing National Party finally agrees to hold South Africa's first universal elections, open to voters and candidates of all races. But though President de Klerk was indeed easing South Africa out of apartheid, he would not relinquish the country to Mandela without a fight.
Negotiate? No, I didn't say that is a matter for negotiation.
And that apartheid regime realized that after a while, that in order to negate a lot of his power in terms of the vote, they had to stack the ballot like they did that ballot, right? There's people in there who were never political, who just wanted to be involved some way, shape, or form in the new free South Africa. Plus some, they even have a soccer party up there. I mean, how obvious is that?
Thus, the ballot is not as straightforward a piece of government bureaucracy as it appears at first glance. The ballot wasn't printed in 12 languages to be inclusive, but as part of a massive campaign of voter education across a country which had never before participated in democracy.
Near the fields, on the shop floor.
Classes like this are going on all across the country. Millions of first-time voters getting a crash course in democracy.
Those stickers at the bottom weren't merely due to a failure to meet a deadline. The IFP, a Zulu nationalist party and bitter rivals of the ANC, very nearly boycotted the election entirely.
Stickers of the party had to be hastily affixed by hand at the bottom of each ballot paper.
Alongside the violence, there was simple racism.
Because you people are the fucking cause of this now. So get out.
The patronizing attitude of white South Africans who couldn't fathom handing their country over to the people they had crushed for so long.
This banquet in aid of the starving was held with the country in a state of emergency, the townships in flames, and drought searing the black homelands. But there were more important things to talk about.
These South Africans gather for what they jokingly called the last white weekend.
The majority of these people in this country is not ready. Some of them don't even know there's an election on.
But in spite of all of this, the figure of Nelson Mandela seemed strong enough to hold the country together. To most, Mandela was the only hope that South Africa had of coming out of the election intact.
Back then, a lot of people saw Nelson Mandela as a savior. They saw him as someone that was really going to bring about change and bring about real transformation for the country. And so here we have this outspoken, charismatic leader who's a real father, grandfather type. And his mere presence is one of diplomacy and righteousness, and he comes across as a real hero, good person.
Was Nelson Mandela feared by whites in South Africa in 94?
94, no. Not feared. They actually revered him. If it wasn't for him, it was some other organizations or some other individuals, even further left of center, there might have been a little more bloodshed.
On the 26th of April, 1994, millions queued up to cast their vote.
The time of change of heart.
My parents went to go vote, and when they came home, they were happy. And when they voted, you would see like a black mark on the thumb to indicate that you voted.
The elections, we were in Richmond ready to cast the vote. Right?
You voted in that?
I voted in that.
I didn't know you. Okay, sure.
All the South Africans were calling.
There are people who died for this. Most people who fought for this, they couldn't take us to the promised land.
No, we are going to be free. Each and everybody is going to be free.
I feel just like when I was born by my mother.
The election is considered a technical disaster, even by those who run it. Accusations of voter fraud, sabotage, and computer hacking plague the tallying of the votes. All major parties point the finger at the others. And yet, despite the violence that led up to it, and the chaos that surrounded it, there is no denying what a triumph this election was for Africa.
Enjoyed it immensely, just to see that all the world leaders would go there. And
people felt like, you know what, we have freedom. We have freedom to move. We have freedom to express ourselves. We have freedom to develop ourselves. People just believed that Nelson Mandela was someone that would basically come through for the people. And he did. In a major way, he did.
Whether the ANC actually fulfilled that promise of freedom in the decades that followed is another question. Mandela's message of national reconciliation played out only partially, and South Africa's economy continues to be dominated by a few British and Boer families. Old ideas can be hard to shake.
My parents would always say, listen, it's going to take 3 generations, at least 3 generations, to get the psychology of racism out. Because you're born into it, you're bred into it, because you're nursed by a nanny between 0 and 5. And then you send up to school, and when you go to school, you're taught to hate the very person that's loved you, or that you love. As long as the older folks, and they all die off, and the younger folks become more democratic in mind, and more open to reality, what human beings are, then you won't have these things. And it's going to take a while.
But there's something about South Africa that will always be worth fighting for.
That is said about Africa generally. If you go to Africa, it's something about the ambient atmosphere, your smells of the earth, the plants. It's the type of sun, there's a different sun that beats on you. You really could feel the deep history.
There's something special about that land. Even when you're flying over the country and the plane is landing, you just get a certain vibration. It transcends understanding, it transcends logic. South African people are so humble, so beautiful, so honest. They're authentic.
Walking down the street and you look up and someone's walking, you say hi to each other, acknowledge your human beings. You have no idea who you are, you've never met each other, but you still acknowledge that you are brother and sister or brother and brother of the same land. It feels like home. It really does.
For me, the meaning of this ballot depends on whether you see it as an ending or a beginning. As an ending to 340 years of colonialism and legalized racism, the ballot is an unequivocal triumph. Mandela's election was a victory we cannot take for granted, a testament to the power of hope and commitment to justice. But as a beginning of a new South Africa, the ballot's triumph is far less secure. While apartheid has ended, racial resentments have not, and political progress continues to be hampered by massive inequality and corruption. Mandela's dream of a unified South Africa beyond distinctions of white, black, and colored seems an ever more distant goal. In our world, the past few years have seen democracy come increasingly under threat, where elections are more messy and divisive than ever, and the reality of racial justice is increasingly hollow. Whether the promise of this ballot is ultimately fulfilled may depend upon you and me.